What's up? We are back. Welcome to another edition of the Nerf Herders Assemble podcast. I'm Josh. My buddy Seth is moving this week, so he is busy. But I invited my longtime friend, Allie Roby, over to the show because we're both Batman friends, and we are Batman friends. We're both Batman fans. And we're both going to the fan event IMAX screening of the Batman tomorrow in less than 24 hours. So I thought I'd have you on and talk about Batman.
Yay! Happy to be here.
How are you doing today? How's your Monday?
My Monday's pretty good. For a Monday.
I hear that.
Nothing super exciting with work.
Okay. Well, I don't, for those that don't know Allie, I went to school, 8th grade on with Allie. We both love movies. We both love Batman. Back in the day, we used to go to midnight screenings when those were still a thing. I'm going to share. Let's see here. I didn't have this pre-set up. There we go. So this is us at, I think, the Dark Knight Rises midnight screening and IMAX. So that was something, because I know I didn't see Dark Knight with you because I was in Italy for that. But yeah, that's we're sporting our Batman gear. That's how we rocked it back in the day. So That was awesome. But now we don't have to do midnight screenings because there's usually, like, if it comes out on Friday, instead of having to go to the 12 a.m. showing, there's usually like a 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. showing on Thursday nights. And in this case, there's one 2 days before, special for us. So
even better.
Now we're going to see it in a Limax or a Faux Max at the Westroads Mall. We do have one real IMAX over in Council Bluffs and then one at the zoo, but they don't show regular movies. But I didn't want to drive all the way over there, so I'm happy to see it on a big screen. I don't care, but I'm excited. So I thought we'd go over like our expectations for the film, our predictions for the film a little later. But first, I wanted to talk about the history of Batman on screen. There's so many. Look how many Batman live. This is just the live action stuff. This isn't
right.
I know I have some video game stuff in here, but not the animated stuff, which there's so many animated movies. But this is a lot. I mean, Robert Pattinson's adding himself to a long list of actors. So I do have them on DVD somewhere. I couldn't find them. I was planning on doing a watch-a-thon of the Lewis Wilson and the Robert Lowry Batman stuff. These were black and white, like 20 to 30 minute shorts that were played in the theater way back in the day in the 30s and the 40s. And they were fun. They're definitely a different take. But other than those two, is there anybody else on the screen that you don't recognize, or have you seen all the way back to the Adam West era?
I don't think I have. I think my first Batman that I really remember is Val Kilmer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. And introduced kind of late, I guess, in the game of Batman. But yeah, Val Kilmer, that's who I remember as my first Batman.
Wow. Okay. Have you seen the Michael Keaton Batman films?
I haven't, but I feel like I'm missing out.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I know.
So like Jack Nicholson, Joker, or who played Selena Kyle? Why am I suddenly blanking on her name? Oh crap! Who played her? Michelle Pfeiffer, or as Catwoman, or Danny DeVito as Penguin. You didn't see those films?
Oh no, I saw those. Oh, was that Michael Keaton? Am I getting them mixed up? I'm getting them mixed up. Yes, I did see that one. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
That Tim was Burton. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because that was like the Batman '89 film was the first Michael Keaton film that had Jack Nicholson's
Yeah.
Joker, and that was kind of like the Batman Renaissance. Like before then, Batman on screen was the Adam West '60s, '70s camp with the
Mhm.
bam and the pow and the funny music and
Right.
everything, and then in the '80s there was kind of this resurgence of Batman in the comics, kind of redesigning him and making him a little darker, and then they did the same thing on the screen with Michael Keaton, and then it went back to camp with
Yeah.
Batman Forever and Batman and
Mhm.
Robin. But I liked Val Kilmer as Batman. Did you
Mhm.
like him?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I actually I know that movie, well, and George Clooney's movie with the,
Hmm.
those were kinda, like, ones that people didn't really like all that much, but,
Hmm.
I liked them. I mean, especially growing up, that was my exposure to Batman at the time at first, I watched the cartoons a little bit, but those were kinda my first, uh, exposures to Batman, so, I mean, I was all about it, like, "This is so awesome,"
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
Um But I know people hated Jim Carrey as, the joke not the Joker, sorry, the Riddler, but
Hmm.
I loved it, but I loved Jim Carrey at the time too, so
I think, I mean, I know plenty of people that like those films, and that's fine. I mean, there's, just like there's different comics, there's different eras of comics. If you're a person that likes camp as much as you like the serious side of Batman, then those definitely served that purpose. And
Mm,
to be fair, I mean, Michael Keaton's Batman were dark, but they were
mhm,
campy as well. It was Tim Burton. It
right.
was Tim Burton's Batman. It wasn't
Exactly.
essential Batman. And I have problems with those. So but yeah, I tomorrow is the day. Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
tickets? Derby Gaming, are you going? Because we're going. We can't
Mhm,
wait. Jeffrey, uh yeah, this is all the live action ones as far as I know, at least the credited ones. And then of course you have like Kevin Conroy with animated
mhm,
stuff. Derpy is going. I didn't have space for all of them. I'd love to do a breakdown. Obviously I'm a fan of the animated series, but Val Kilmer, I love Val Kilmer. He's a great actor.
mhm,
Uh, Jeffrey's going tomorrow as well. He just came out with a documentary about his life, and he loved Batman growing up, and he like jumped at the chance to be Batman, but then they offered him Batman and Robin. They didn't go straight to George Clooney, and he
hmm,
turned it down. And there's a quote in his document, just like, because like back then, unlike what they did with Bale and Ben Affleck and everybody since then, once you got into that suit, like you couldn't move. And he was
right,
talking about how like you couldn't even hear, so people would leave him in that suit for hours and just not talk to him because he couldn't even hear him. And he said it
right,
was like one of the most horrible experiences on a movie he's ever had. And there's this line where he says, "Every boy wishes to be Batman. They don't wish to act as Batman."
mhm,
And and he just didn't want to come back. And I mean, would he have made for a better Batman in Batman and Robin? I don't know if he would have made the movie better because it's still a Joel Schumacher film, but
mhm.
I really did like him for what he brought to the role. I think he's just a cool guy.
Yeah, I agree. I really, liked his Batman. And I'm sure I might get some hate for this, but I liked his Batman better than Michael Keaton's Batman,
Mm,
but it might be just a film preference too, because I just really enjoyed Batman Forever as a kid. Um, but I don't know. I really liked his Batman a lot, but I do remember, hearing about how difficult it is to be in that suit, and I don't blame him.
yeah. But Michael Keaton, I mean, when he first got cast as Batman, there was this huge uproar in the fan community. Like, people wrote in letters that you can find online to WB saying, "What the hell? The multiplicity guy. Why him? It was a big thing." And I think he sold some people. I think it was more just seeing this darker version of Batman on
Right.
screen. Like, there's plenty of things in his movies that weren't that great. Like, he definitely brought a persona to Bruce Wayne that in times felt cool and other times felt kind of dumb.
Mm.
Like, like, "Oh, I don't think I've ever been in this room in my house," or stuff like that. Or when when the girl wakes up and he's hanging upside down while
Yeah.
sleeping, like stuff like that
Like,
was just
okay.
dumb.
I mean, I think, it was a Tim Burton film too. So I mean, you
Mhm.
have to like think of like, but there's an interesting way to bring Batman back is to give it
Mhm.
to Tim Burton because Tim Burton is just kind of out there. I mean, he does some awesome stuff. I'm not dogging
Mhm.
on him at all, but
Yeah.
it's weird to think that like some of the comedic stuff he brought in because I don't know, you just don't think of Tim Burton being super comedic. But
He's got his own brand of humor for sure.
mhm.
Doug Holmes says short, scrawny, balding actor was the gripe with Michael Keaton, and that it definitely was. Doug, I don't know if you can see my shirt, by the way. I'm so excited. End of the month, going back to it's Grand Comic Fest 4 now. Can't wait for that. But yeah, I think a lot of people, everybody has something in most of these films. I mean, it was definitely, like you said, if you want to bring Batman back and have a stark difference from the Adam West
Mhm.
stuff of the 60s with the super vibrant colors and the shark repellent and all the craziness of that era, bring in Tim
Tim
Burton.
Burton,
He'll
that's like
definitely
the
give you something
exact
different.
opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people have issues with anybody that is playing that. I mean, you're talking about a beloved character that people have had, in their life for a super long time, a lot of fans, and, they remember certain Batmans. And so, I
Hmm.
mean, like, Christian Bale, there was I know a lot of people that were, not sure about him being able to sell it. Ben Affleck, I know I was even kind of on the really Ben Affleck, like,
Hmm.
I don't know if
Hmm.
I could see him as Batman. And Robert Pattinson, now granted, I'm watching some of the trailers. I'm still excited for the film, but like he's giving off like young penguin or the why can't I think of his name? The doctor, um, scarecrow vibes for
Oh yeah.
me in some of the
Mm-hmm.
images versus like, the
It's
what
definitely
has
an emo
been.
vibe for sure.
Yeah, emo. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a darker vibe than, the playboy, pretty boy persona that they've been kind of going off of the last few films. Or I mean, really,
Yeah.
if you think about it all the way back. And so, a lot of the films, but
Yeah, this is definitely the My Chemical Romance version of Batman, which I love, but we'll see if it works in the film.
right.
Derpy Gamer Gaming says Kilmer was good Bruce and Keaton wasn't. I agree. Keaton was this awkward Bruce. Like, there were
Mm,
times when he shined, like the "let's get nuts" part, but pretty
mhm.
much any time he was interacting with people, he was always this awkward, and that could have been like, the show he was putting on, but Kilmer definitely brought this more stoicness, this more, like bachelor, rich boy type thing
Mhm.
to the role. And then Clooney, everybody expected Clooney to just be suave, on
Yeah.
camera. The doctor,
Mhm.
role that he played
Yeah.
in ER and everything. Yeah. So everybody expected him to be, super playboyish, but then the movie, he wasn't a great Batman. Like, the Batman was,
Mhm.
and that wasn't just him, that was also the writing, like the
Yeah.
bat nipples and the credit card and all that. And
Mhm.
um and Derpy brings up a good point, and I was just about to say this as well, this is being sold as year 2 Batman.
Mm.
So this is a very young Batman with Robert Pattinson. This is not the seasoned, gritty, beaten down, doesn't care anymore Batman that we got with Ben Affleck. in Batman v
Mhm.
Superman. This is like still young, still trying to figure out his stuff. I doubt it'll follow the year two storyline, which is one of my favorite storylines in the comic. But it definitely feels like a younger Batman. And,
Yeah.
whether or not Matt Reeves pulls from the comics like like Nolan did with a lot
Mhm.
of his story arcs. Like he didn't directly copy full on plots from the comics, but he pulled so much that it just felt right on screen. Matt Reeves could be doing that as well, or he could just be doing something completely different in with a young Batman. Either way, I mean, based on his previous stuff, especially with the Planet of the Apes films, I'm
Mhm.
excited to see what he can do with this because he's got a lot of talent behind the camera for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't have a lot of exposure to the young Batman persona and, like, his, like, start. So, I'm really
Mhm.
excited to kinda see how that is, what that looks like. And,
Mhm.
I definitely see this being a darker one of the darker films we probably will have gotten, thus
Yeah.
far. And I could be wrong, but that's how I'm reading it to be pretty dark, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, I am too. And we're gonna get to I have a whole nother screen for predictions. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I
Sorry.
wanted to look back. No, that's me. I wanted to look back at some of the villains of these previous films, and I don't have a separate screen for that. I had to work today. This was kind of an impromptu thing. But the Keaton films, you had Joker, you had Penguin, you had Catwoman, and we know we're getting at least Penguin and Catwoman in this new film.
Mhm.
Val Kilmer, you had the Riddler, and we're getting the
Mhm.
Riddler in this film. This is a stacked film in terms of villains.
Yeah.
Three films that we know of, and you also had Two Face with Kilmer, and then Batman and Robin. You had three more villains: Poison Ivy,
Mhm.
Bane, and Mister Freeze. So is Jim Carrey's Riddler still your favorite in those with those era of Batman films?
You know, I would love to see another Riddler. Like, I don't think we have in any of the other films, if I'm not mistaken. And I would just really like to see how it would be could be portrayed in these more, like, serious, a little bit darker, less campy, um,
Mm,
movies that we've been getting. But I mean, who doesn't love Jim Carrey, like, in his golden days? So, not
sure.
having any exposure to, the character outside of that movie when I first saw it and as a kid, like, I loved it 'cause, like, Jim Carrey, he's silly, but he's evil, but he's, like, I don't know. And he was in Batman, who I love Batman, so
I I think maybe the Jim Carrey from the Number 23 film could have been an
Mm,
interesting, like, darker Riddler. That
yeah,
was he's definitely done some serious roles as well. He knows how to do the dramas.
right.
Derby Gang singing, saying, "Watch Batman Year One if you haven't seen much of younger Batman." Yeah, they did a animated adaptation of Batman Year One, and it's fantastic. It's definitely a different Catwoman, and it's a unpolished Batman still trying to get to know Gordon and move around Gotham as a year one superhero. So that was a really good story, definitely. And that was a good adaptation too. There's a lot of adaptations that are really great, and it's only what do you say? It's only an hour and 4 minute adaptation. So yeah, that was good
Check.
recommendation. Um, yeah, I think though, like I said, there's good parts about those movies. I definitely like Jim Carrey back then. Even though we have had big muscle versions of Mister Freeze in the comics before, we've also had these scrawny, more tactical versions. Something that is definitely different from the Schwarzenegger version of Mister Freeze. I really didn't like Batman and Robin. I think that's of all of those films, I think that's the most egregious one. What they
Yeah.
like, they kind of did Poison Ivy, right, with Uma Thurman, just her energy and her vibes around that.
Mhm.
But making Bane this like brain dead Nacho Libre type guy who just kind of grunted and looked really dumb. It just wasn't my cup of tea at all.
I wouldn't have even remembered that that was supposed to be Bane if you hadn't said it, to be honest with you, because, like, I just think of Bane from the Christian Bale, like, this crazy
Right.
badass, like, Hulk of a, villain and foe, and, like, yeah, I wouldn't have.
Stark difference, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
quite a bit. But I agree, of those films that, my first experience with Batman, that was probably my least favorite of all of them.
I did love how growing up knowing this, when we were in high school, um, one of the biggest shows that was on TV was Smallville.
Mhm,
And that was like it was before the Arrowverse and before a lot of the current DC television. It kind of like brought the way for that. It was definitely a starter type show. But John Glover was in that show, and I'm gonna bring him up here in a second. John Glover played, and it's gonna be really blurry, so my apologies. But John Glover played Lex Luthor's dad, Lionel Luthor, and there's got to be a better picture of him. Let's do this one. And he was great. He was absolutely great as as Lionel Luthor. But then he was in Batman and Robin as like the scientist that like belittled Uma Thurman, and she gave him like the kiss of death, and he
mm,
died in the beginning, and he was just this weird character. And I remember watching Smallville and just being like, oh my gosh, that's the dude from Batman and Robin. Why is he in this show? But he was fantastic. He was like a hell of a character for that show. Did you ever watch Smallville?
I think I probably watched it a couple times with you, but I didn't, follow it, like, through its whole, which I
It
hear
was
is sad. I should go back and watch it. I know you and Dustin, my husband, were big fans.
it had its place in time. I don't know if it still holds up, but
No.
but and then so we get to the Christian Bale era, and I think that Batman Begins is an underrated film. When people think of the Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale saga, they immediately go to Dark Knight. I even put Dark Knight as the logo here because you just can't think of those movies and not immediately think of Heath Ledger as the Joker. But
Right.
I think Nolan just did this amazing thing by his first film, choosing two villains that A, we haven't seen on screen, and B, if you're not a Batman animated series or comic fans, you probably wouldn't have known who Ra's al Ghul was, or
Mm.
the Scarecrow, and those being the primary villains in that film. I thought that was fantastic. It was just enough, and it was like the precursor to something bigger.
Yeah. I mean, it like, I didn't have a ton of Batman after, the 90s after George Clooney. The occasional cartoon,
Mhm.
but, this really made me kind of fall back in love with Batman. Is just that movie was like so good, and it was so different from anything I'd seen Batman before. And just really well done. And I really loved the villains. Scarecrow was cool. I think the actor, I cannot think of his name that played him.
Cillian Murphy,
Yeah,
or
was
yeah,
just brilliant in that role. Like
he's great.
he just did it so well. Um, but yeah, it was just I agree with you that it's underrated. I mean, Dark Knight is amazing, obviously,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I really did love Batman Begins.
Well, and I think the reason why that film was so great is because it took so long between Batman and Robin and that film. Like there was so many other films that almost came to be. Like Joel Schumacher had another film. I mean, it was very reminiscent of Sam Raimi's, fourth Spider-Man film that everybody thought was happening, and then all of a sudden it didn't happen. Well, Joel Schumacher had a third Batman film called Batman Triumphant, and that was actually going to have the Scarecrow in it and a few other things. Then there was going to be a Batman Year One adaptation. Then there was going to be a Batman Beyond adaptation, very popular sequel cartoon series to the animated series. Your husband and I have a big affinity for the Batman Beyond movie, Return of the Joker. But yeah, so then, I mean, it was like pitch after pitch after pitch, knockdown after knockdown after knockdown. And then Nolan came around with some of his pals and came up with Batman Begins. And it was just enough. Like it wasn't too full on crazy. It was very grounded. They wanted it super grounded. And then it set the stage for The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight was not a guaranteed film, but I just remember the last scene of Batman Begins with Batman up on the rooftop talking to Gordon, and Gordon gives him the Joker card. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we haven't had a Joker on screen since 1989. What are they going to do? And then Heath Ledger, the Heath Ledger renaissance as the Joker came about, which was, I remember when they announced him and people were like, the 10 things I hate about you, guy. Yeah, absolutely. Like what? And then they showed that, I wonder if I can bring it up. They showed that, that first poster of him, Heath Ledger Joker. The first poster of him just like hiding behind the glass. Yeah, this thing. Let's see here. I need a better picture, not that one. It was just so damn creepy. Here we go. This picture was so creepy. And it's still blurry. I don't know why, but I don't care. It's this picture right here. When this came out, people are like, "What the? That's Heath Ledger? Like you gotta be shitting me! Like that's not Heath Ledger." And immediately everybody was like, "How dark are you going with this?"
Right? I mean, like for me, it was like, whoa. I just remember the one from 1989, that was a very different Joker than what they brought. And I, again, not having read the comics and knowing how dark now that he is in the comics, bringing that in was like, for me, a little bit like, whoa, this guy is like messed up, evil, and I love it.
Yeah. It was a perfect interpretation of the Joker. I was in Rome at the time. I was just doing like a 30-day backpack trip around Europe, and I was serving over there. And I was in Rome. It was my first day in Rome ever. And did I go to the Colosseum? No. Did I go to the Vatican? No. I went to 8 different theaters trying to find the one theater that would play it in English, and I found one showing. It's so crazy. Like I just can't imagine seeing that film, like watching Heath Ledger to somebody else's voice. But I found one screening in English, and it was like at 11 p.m. at night.
Yes.
And I saw it on opening weekend in Rome, and it was like the best part of my vacation because it was amazing. It was so good.
So good.
That film. Yeah. That first teaser though, for The Dark Knight. Yeah. That was a big thing with Nolan. He knew how to just give you enough, and I don't know which one. I don't know if you're talking about Derpy, if you're talking about when it's just the bats kind of forming. Well, it's not just the bats. The bats was the Batman Begins. It's like the Batman symbol, like breaking through with light, and Bruce Wayne's talking to Gordon, or he's talking to Alfred, and they're you just hear voices, and you hear Heath Ledger's laugh, and then you see the Joker card like hit the screen, and you hear the some men just want to watch the world burn. It was just like enough. Like, it didn't even show any footage, and it got people like, oh my gosh, that laugh, that creepy ass laugh. It got people going. It was just, I don't know if that's the one you're talking about, Derpy Gamer, but that was awesome. And then we did have another interpretation of Catwoman in Dark Knight Rises, and we had Bane. And while I'll admit that there are issues with that film, I did love seeing Tom Hardy as Bane, and I liked him more than I liked Catwoman in that film. I wasn't a big fan of Anne Hathaway's Catwoman in that film.
I completely agree. I think they could have taken Catwoman completely out, and I would have been so fine with it. Bane was so much more of an interesting part of the storyline. And Anne Hathaway just didn't sell it for me as Catwoman. I don't know. She wasn't kind of that sexy character you think of when you think of Catwoman, or at least me. You just think of this like aloof, sexy woman that, is just has a dark side, and she couldn't sell it for me.
Yeah, and then they also had Talia al Ghul in that film as well, and I think granted it was a third act reveal that she was Talia. I had guessed that she was Talia earlier on in the film, but I was still like happy to see another character that hadn't been on screen before coming from the comics. But I think I agree. I think they could have easily cut Catwoman out completely and maybe focused on Talia a little more. But I do have problems with that film, but I do love that film for many reasons. I think the Christopher Nolan trilogy of Batman films was just fantastic. And then that kind of launched the new DC films. And it was kind of a sad day when they said that, we're not going to see Bale's Batman with Henry Cavill's Superman. Yeah. But the next film was Man of Steel, and then we went on from there. And then eventually Ben Affleck came on the scene for Batman v Superman. And while I think a lot of people have issues with that film, I love Ben Affleck as Batman. He is just great as a rich bachelor that is just down on his life. Like, life just sucks for him, and he doesn't care. Like, you could just tell he just doesn't give a shit anymore in that film. Yeah,
with all my reservations I had about when they announced he was going to be the next Batman, I really, really enjoyed him in the film a lot. It was a really cool film. And I just was really surprised how much I liked him in that role. Because I had a really hard time picturing it. But and his, I was just going to say, Doug, his suit was so awesome. Like, the whole metal thing, I'd never seen anything like that with Batman. So it was really cool and just the storyline of him, how he actually came up with the ideas on what he would need to do to fight Superman at all. It was really a good film. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Derpy says, I'm probably the only one here that liked the casting of Ben Affleck. His costume was on point. I liked when they announced him. He's over the years, between different films that he's done, even when he wasn't like the main character, like in Boiler Room or something, he just have whenever he was on camera, he just have this commanding presence. Now, if they had cast Ben Affleck like right after Good Will Hunting, I would have been like, I don't know about that Affleck. But this was the Argo Affleck. This was I'm trying to think of other Affleck films. He'd done plenty of shit films, this wasn't I wasn't expecting Reindeer Games Ben Affleck, but he had done plenty of other stuff. I don't think he'd
What
done.
was
Let's
his
see.
one that he did, like, this film came after, well, probably a ways after where he played, like, the robber in Boston, right? The bank robber?
Yeah, The Town. Yeah, this
The
was 6
Town,
years
yeah.
after that. That was a great film.
Great movie.
The
Yeah.
Town. Fantastic. Yeah. This film came out, Batman v Superman came out the same year as The Accountant, and The Accountant was an amazing
Really good.
film. He was pretty much, dead shot or bloodshot in that film, just not in a comic book setting. But I liked him. I liked Batman v Superman, and I loved the Ultimate Edition. Like Zack Snyder, I am a Snyder defender. I love his work. I think the stuff that they cut out of Batman v Superman and then put back in the extended edition fleshed out the film so much more.
Mhm.
And I just don't like, have you seen the new Spider-Man film yet?
Not yet. Oh,
Okay,
I'm
I'm
so
not
sad.
gonna. I,
Don't see it. Don't
I,
spoil it for me.
I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but that film is how long? What's the runtime of that film? That film is 2 hours and 28 minutes. And people did not care. In game was, let's see, in game runtime. That movie was 3 hours and 2 minutes. And I'm pretty sure Warner Brothers had said, we need Batman v Superman. It was either we needed at an hour and a half or we needed under 2 hours. And they just cut all of this context. And it wasn't just context, it was a lot of great stuff. And when they threw that back in for the Ultimate Edition, there was a lot of naysayers that was like, well, this does make for a better film. It's not just fanfare. It's not just an extra scene here or an extension here. It was context. And then for some reason they did it again with Zack Snyder's Justice League. That so much more than just cutting that film.
It was a
But
completely changed the film. I mean,
yeah,
it was a completely different film in my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah. I
I
could go on about that, but
We could, and I've talked that film to death. But one of the best parts of that film was Ben Affleck's Batman. I think he brought the team together. It was a redemption story for him. We saw him at one of his low moments in Batman v Superman, and that was very reflective of many events in the comics and even in the animated shows. We always know that you can't be this dark, brooding guy forever and not let it get to you. Doug Holmes saying, people don't realize that Bruce is the world's greatest detective. They think he's a dark superhero. I hope they focus on his intelligence in the new film. And I agree with you. It is. They do tend to focus more on his dark persona than his. I mean, in the Nolan films, they did a lot of detective work between trying to make those films grounded to. I think there was that one scene with how he got the thumbprint off a bullet. Like, it didn't
oh,
make sense
yeah.
logically, but at least they like
But
tried to show that he was
that
a
he
detective
yeah.
trying to solve things.
Mhm.
I think that's a lot of people's complaints about the trailers for this new film, is that it doesn't look like a detective version of Batman. But if it's year 2, maybe he hasn't
Right.
gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, I was
But
just gonna say, it's supposed to be a young Batman. I mean,
mhm.
it's gonna take time to build up that, skill set.
Mhm. Well, I think it's time we talk about what we hope to see and our expectations for the film. But one more look at this impressive row of gentlemen that played the Batman over time. I don't think anybody would have looked at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 actors and said, you know who the next person would be? The guy from Twilight. Let's
Right.
get him on here. Let's get him into this movie.
Keaton.
However, if you have seen any of Robert Pattinson's films since
Aside from
Twilight,
Twilights.
yeah, aside from Twilight and aside from that weird 9/11 romance movie that he did, that
Yeah.
was so awkward. Outside of that, he's
Yeah.
a fantastic actor, and
Mm.
I can't wait to see him in this new film. he's Good Time is an amazing film. The Lighthouse, don't get Maddie started on The Lighthouse. She loves that film. And then he was in Nolan's Tenet in 2020. So he knows how to do action. He knows how to do drama. And you put an experienced actor in a suit that looks this amazing. I think
Mhm.
it's probably going to work as well as having somebody like Matt Reeves behind the camera. I mean, he's not just a director, he works on story elements and everything as well. And while I'm not the biggest fan of Cloverfield, I really liked what he did with the Planet of the Apes films. He made those films like almost the perfect trilogy. And to see that mind take on Batman gets me excited.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see like what where it goes. I mean, just I don't even know. I'm just excited to get to see a darker Batman, a younger Batman, just
Mhm.
something completely different and see what it looks like to get more, familiar or involved in this part of him that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, he's got a hell of a different Batmobile in this car. It's more or in this movie. It's more of a like a muscle car than
Which I'm all about.
uh yeah. And I liked some of the Schumacher Batmobiles. I liked the Christopher or the Tim Burton Batmobile is iconic. And then of course the Nolan Tumbler was fantastic as well.
Okay.
But they all look good, and I think this is just definitely different. It just looks
Mhm.
like a muscle car with some propulsion on the back. So but it looks awesome. I
I'm
can't
okay with
wait.
that. Yeah.
We got Andy Circus as Alfred, and I just love how Alfred's got this like glow up over the last couple decades. Like he went from this, at least on camera, or I mean on screen, he went from this super old, super kind of fragile presence that had a good quip now and then and was sarcastic now and then, but he wasn't like a force to be reckoned with. And they changed that over time in the animated series and in the comics. And then Michael Keaton had this awesome backstory. And who was the Zack Snyder Alfred?
I can't think of his name.
Oh crap, I'm blanking on his name. He's great. He's a great actor. Jeremy Irons. He was great.
Mhm.
And now we've got Gollum himself as Alfred, and he looks awesome. He looks like a force to be reckoned with. I don't know if he's gonna get into the dirty muck with Batman in this film or
Mhm.
not, but he certainly looks like a force to be reckoned with. So I'm excited to see him take on the role. But we are getting a new version of the Riddler, and just from this picture, it looks like a hell of a different take on him.
Mhm.
What do you have any fears of this style of Riddler, or do you think this could work, or what are your thoughts?
I'm really just I mean, like, I'm excited to see it, like I was saying before, a different, less campy version of the Riddler and what that would look like and be like. Um, so yeah, definitely seems like it's gonna be, about as far away from Jim Carrey as you can get. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I'm not really worried per se. I'm more just excited about to see what it looks like and what it plays out to be.
Well, I love Paul Dano as an actor, so I'm sure he's going to act the hell out of it. Over on the other side of the screen, you've got our new Catwoman, who looks fantastic. The stuff
Mhm.
that have showcased her in the trailer, is it Zoe Kravitz? Is that her name? I'm bad with names, people. If you haven't figured
I've
this
been
out, yeah,
I'm terrible with it.
Zoe Kravitz. She looks great. She's a hell of an actress. I can't wait to see her in the film. It looks, I mean,
Mhm.
just from what they've shown on the trailers, she just looks like again, I'm going to say it again, force to be reckoned with. But holy crap, Colin Farrell as the Penguin, that
Does
doesn't
not
even
look like
look like
him.
him.
Not at
Like
all.
at all. It's so
Mm-mm.
crazy. But I love it. He looks like the Penguin.
Mhm.
Like he's got the persona. Now they're talking about even giving him a spin-off show on HBO Max, just showing
Really?
him as the Penguin.
Hmm.
And just from the seconds of footage I've seen him in the trailers, I'm like, yes, all for it. I love Colin Farrell. To see him
Yeah,
as a mafia penguin guy, that just sounds great.
it does. It does. And yeah, I just like it blows my mind that that's him. Uh,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
it's just yeah, it doesn't look anything like him,
And I
really.
think the penguin, you know, I love Danny DeVito, but that wasn't the penguin. That was more Killer Croc than it was the penguin. And Doug Holmes is over here saying would love to see a proper Killer Croc. I think Danny DeVito's penguin was more Killer Croc than Penguin. And of course, we did get a version of Killer Croc in the Suicide Squad film that wasn't that great. But in
Mm.
the animated series, especially in the comics, Penguin is a formidable villain. He's smart. He's got the he's like this mafia boss. He's bigger than Falcone. He's got the business side of things. Like he is a formidable villain, and it looks like they're going to give him the respect that he deserves in this film. And they kind of did. I didn't really like the show Gotham, but on Fox they had a young like teenage
Mm. Like
or
when he first
preteen
became
Batman.
yeah.
Yeah, and I did not like that show. But the guy that they got to play Penguin, for the most part, the Penguin stuff was pretty good. I did like their take on Penguin. They definitely gave him smarts, and uh, he had a lot of plans for the future, ambition. And this looks, Colin Farrell looks like somebody who is on the top of his game,
Mhm.
and he's not afraid. At least in the trailers, he's not afraid at all of Batman. He's like, calm down, emo kid, this is you're new to this game. This is my world, and I
Right.
can't wait to see more of that. I think he just looks like he's killing it. So, yes, Derby Gaming saying they're talking about giving him an R-rated Penguin show, which would be great. And honestly, well, speaking of, a lot of people were upset that this film wasn't rated R, which The Dark Knight wasn't rated R, and that film was dark as hell.
Mhm.
But it is interesting that if you go over to the UK, their R equivalent of our rating has been given to the Batman, and the studio and even the theaters over there have petitioned against it because it means less people will go. Unlike here, where you can bring your 2-year-old to an R-rated film as
Oh,
long as you have an adult, which I don't care for.
mhm.
I can't stand it, especially if I know the film's going to be, like Saw or something. I just don't
Right.
like seeing a
Young
child.
kids and yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that. But in America, you can bring any kid of any age to an R-rated film as long as there's an adult with you. In the UK, that's not the case. If it's um, I think their version of an R-rated film is 15. If it's that rating, it's only a certain age group can go. I think it's like
Mhm.
12 and over can go. Otherwise, you can't. So they're sticking with that, and apparently they believe that the violence and everything in this film is enough to do that. So it
Mm.
kind of is an R-rated film, just not on paper.
Wow. That
But
makes me really intrigued then.
yeah, it does too. It does me too. Derpy says he really enjoyed Gotham. I liked aspects of the show, but overall,
I
I
couldn't
did
get into
not like
it.
preteen preteen Batman. Was just no, this is dumb. Uh, Derpy Gaming also talked about supposedly there's a rumor Mr. Freeze is supposed to be in the sequel villain for the Batman.
Hmm.
Matt Reeves confirmed it, so yeah, the sequel will probably be Mr. Freeze. He talked about it. I mean, I think I'd prefer to go with Robert Pattinson's hope that they bring the Court of Owls, because this definitely feels the trailers for this feels like a grungy noir, back to that tone for Batman, and Court of Owls is definitely a villain that works in that. But I like Doug with proper Croc. I get excited when any villain that hasn't had a lot of screen time gets gets brought to the screen, or in these cases, villains that are iconic in the past, but were definitely not great. They're definitely being reinvented for this film, and so I'm super excited about that. And we are going to see it in 22 hours. We're going to go see it. So the fan event, they kind of got you. They kind of charged us at like double for the tickets than we would normally pay. But it's probably a marketing strategy. I think they know they're not going to have a Spider-Man No Way Home crowd, and they also know that while theaters are in a much better position now than they were this time last year or even 6 months ago, I'm sure the WB is like, hey, well, the WB made stupid choices last year. They put all their biggest films out day and date release on HBO Max. Like Dune did incredibly well box office wise for the context of COVID, but I think it would have done even better had they not released it on HBO in 4K HD the same day, and then pirates could just lift it like that. So this, I believe, this is their first film that's back to the only theatrical release in the last year. So I kind of understand why they're doing this fan event. I mean, technically it's an IMAX event, but I'm sure WB's profiting off that. I'm sure they're like, hey, anything that can maximize our profits to make sure that this is a success, because they do need a win. They had a lot of fails last year. They had some really good films, but then, like, I know you haven't seen The Matrix yet, but that was not good. And it didn't do well in the box office. Their Space Jam sequel did not do well in the box office. Dune, like I said, most people would agree that it did pretty well, but it could have done a lot better. So they need a win. And they have been hyping up this film for like 2 years at this point.
Long time.
And I remember that first teaser they dropped at Fandom when nobody expected a trailer at that point. They'd only been filming for like a month. And they dropped that teaser and everybody was like, give me this film now.
And then you had to wait.
Then you had to wait. And then there was all this, I don't know if it was fake news or if it's blown over, but I remember for months there was this, Matt Reeves can't stand Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson can't stand Matt Reeves. This is going to be a one and done film. They don't want to see each other. They don't even want to talk to each other. They hated this experience. And I think that was all like fake, because I've never seen any of them actually comment on that. And now that they're doing all the press, they're talking about, let's get this next film going. Both of them are. So I certainly hope that's not the case, because they've clearly put a lot of passion and effort into this film. And I would hate for them to do that. And then it's just like, but you're not going to get any more of it,
Yeah.
It's definitely a different tone, and it's definitely not, I don't think we're going to see, Jason Momoa's Aquaman in this type of universe, but that's fine. If we get some excellent Batman films, I'm cool with it.
I'm fine with it, too.
Yeah. Well, I think we've talked about this enough. I still got some work to do tonight, and you've got a kid at home, and we're going to be hanging out tomorrow, so I don't need to talk your ear off anymore. But thanks for joining me, Allie.
Thanks for having me.
Any final thoughts on the Batman? Are you stoked?
I'm so stoked. I cannot wait. I can't tell you how excited I am.
Me too. I'm trying. I've been avoiding every single reviewer. I've been avoiding all the TV spots. I just want to go in as cold as I can, which isn't that cold. I'm definitely overhyped for this film, but I hope it's going to be great. So thanks for joining us. What's that?
I said
Say it
I'm going in pretty stone cold. I think I've seen one trailer.
Okay.
So and but like still enough to get me super stoked. So
Nice. Nice.
I'm excited.
All right, me too. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about this later on the channel with the Nerf Herders Assemble review. But thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you get to see it this week. Derpy Gaming, I know you'll be driving like an hour and a half to see it. Hope you have a good time tomorrow night. Doug, I hope you get to see it. You're running a theater, and I can't wait to see you at Grand Comic Fest next month. So, yeah. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.